Marcos, thank you very much for joining us on WBS Television as we head to the World Press Freedom Day. And today we are talking to the head of public affairs at the U.S. Embassy in Kampala, Daniel Travis. It's a great pleasure to talk to you about this important topic. And as the nation prepares to celebrate this day, one would ask, is there cause to celebrate as a fraternity in this country?
Well, first of all, thank you for being here. It's great to be able to talk about this. I really appreciate the opportunity. You know, there are some things to celebrate. I think several journalists in Uganda have created space for themselves simply by becoming experts in their field. You know, when I got here, there were very few journalists that focused on, say, particular topics like, say, government or civil society, health, especially in health. I've seen a group of about 6 journalists in Uganda who have really focused on health, and not just reporting on health, but learning as much as they can about health. You know, we were talking before we started about how little journalists in Uganda make, especially when they're starting out. And when that happens, when you're saying maybe making 5,000 shillings for writing 1,000 words, you can't spend any time getting the background. You can't spend any time learning things in a deeper way about a subject. And that, I think that hinders your reporting, no matter how good you are. So it's been good to see some journalists take it upon themselves to go deeper into their subjects and learn more.
You mentioned the question of ethics in your earlier statement, and one would ask, what is the missing link in the profession in Uganda? What is that ethical issue that needs to be resolved to make the profession a better one?
I wouldn't say it is a missing link. You know, these things are, it's a path that you're following. You know, I mean, there are 2 extremes, have ethics and don't, but I still think it's a series. You know, it's like a chain. You know, you've got to move on from one step to the next, and things improve all the time. And that's not just Uganda, it's the whole world in every profession, you know. Some people are better at things than others, but everybody can improve their skills. I think in Uganda, again, like I said, more specialization. I think on the part of the editors and the owners, better money for journalists. You know, journalism is just such an essential part of a democracy. You have to have journalists like yourself to ask government officials like me uncomfortable questions so that the public can debate those issues, so that the public can hold their governments accountable and their government officials accountable. Without the press, that just won't happen. You know, the press is the only business in America that's protected by the Constitution. And I think that's really telling. It's very important because they do play such an essential role in linking governments to the people the governments are supposed to be responsible to.
The biggest issue in the country right now is the question of regulation after the proposal by the Minister for Information and National Guidance that journalists need to be issued with practicing certificates upon payment of a specified amount of money. What would be your take on that?
We've seen that. I have to say that, like a lot of laws, you know, on the surface of it, I think the law can appear quite reasonable. What worries me is how it will be implemented. To be really honest about it, if there's a journalist out there who's writing about subjects that are uncomfortable to people in power, and then that journalist needs to renew his or her license, will that license be renewed? You know, will we see bureaucratic delays? Will we see sort of unnecessary or spurious allegations being made? And if those things happen, then I think that the embassy is going to take great interest, and the U.S. government more broadly, because as I said, you can't operate a modern society and a proper democracy without reporters being free to do their jobs, not free to say whatever they want, but you know, free to do their jobs, to investigate, to dig up facts, to double check those facts, and then print them for the public to know what's happening in their government. And so we don't want to see any law used to try to restrict that.
If you draw examples from the United States situation, how is regulation done over there compared to what is being proposed in Uganda?
What we have is we have the case law. You know, so like we have the English system of law where, as previous cases are decided in in a lawsuit or in a criminal court or something, then that becomes the body of law behind it. So not all of our laws necessarily come from legislation. I'm not aware of any of individual states may have some of that legislation that defines the standards of journalism and things like that. But I'm not aware. We can get back to you on that. But I think in the United States this is an issue too because those lines are blurring. Right? We have bloggers, we have people on Twitter, we have journalists, we have people starting their own websites. Where's the line between who's a journalist and who's a blogger and what's your personal opinion and what's not? But we don't really have laws to regulate that. What we have is we have this case body of law of slander and libel, and that's what individual courts use to decide and sort of adjust things as we go forward.
And there's the question of the relationship between the state, especially the forces of coercion, and the journalists in executing their duties. What would be your evaluation of that relationship in the Ugandan situation?
I think that, in Uganda we have seen, to be really honest and straightforward, we see some troubling things. We've seen prosecutions of journalists for things and then of course no charges are ever brought or the evidence isn't there, but it takes a year from the time that they're charged with something to when the court acquits them. Well, when that kind of thing happens, you may not be putting journalists in jail, but it has a chilling effect. And although the journalist doesn't go to jail and he still gets to be a free person and practice his job, if you chill them, if they are self-censoring, well, the public still loses. Right? We still lose the benefit of a free press. And so that's something that concerns the embassy deeply and the U.S. government more broadly. You'll see things coming out on World Press Freedom Day, probably from Secretary of State Kerry. You'll definitely see an op-ed from our own ambassador where we'll make these points. Just because journalists aren't being locked up or cracked on the head doesn't mean that they're not being intimidated.
There's the question of cooperation between journalists, of course, as enshrined in the Constitution that gives them the right to organize in trade unions. What will be your opinion on the level of cooperation between Ugandan journalists?
Well, I'm all for strengthening horizontal organizations, as we call them. Organizations, especially if it's meant to improve the professionalism of journalists. One of the groups that we work with quite often here is the Foreign Correspondents Association of Uganda, a horizontal organization of professional foreign correspondents who came together after the Walk to Work protests and some of the mistreatment of local journalists that went on there, to try to do a couple of things. Not only to make sure that attention was brought to any mistreatment, but also to improve the professional standards of their Ugandan colleagues. To transfer as much knowledge as they could to them. And that's exactly the kind of thing that we want to see go forward. So I think that the notion of in our country, unionization is legal. And even for diplomats. And so you would never want to discourage people from having the right to collective bargaining. I think it's a basic right for labor.
What is that one thing that you do not like about journalists in Uganda? If you had a chance to talk to them and make them change it, what is that one thing you would want them to change for the better?
I think for me, I would appreciate a little more fact checking. Sometimes, on occasion, things that are rumor might get presented as fact, or in that sort of thing. The other thing is, but I think for me, if you're writing about the United States, if you're writing about the U.S. government, if you're writing about a foreign policy issue that we're involved in, call me. I think if there's anything that bothers me, it's when I see things said in the press, and I say, you know what, I could have added to that story. I could have given you something that would have given you the other perspective, or could have enhanced the perspective that you had. So that's why I'm happy to see you. If journalists out there have a question, call me. I will answer.
As a development partner of Uganda, what has the United States done to improve the level of journalism in this country, considering that you are better placed to help the journalists in this country to grow?
Well, it's growing. I can tell you that. When I arrived, I have a fabulous staff on my media center, Ugandans, experts on the local media, and journalists who know me, know them better, and know how good they are. So it was Ugandans who came to me and said, look, these are the things that we need to do to improve the journalistic standards. One of the things that I've supported that was initiated by them before I got is what we call our USA Press Corps. This is a group of about 40 Ugandan journalists from media, all different media houses. They're nominated by their editors, and so we work with them as a group. We provide training, we provide access to visitors to the embassy, high-level visitors. We provide background briefings for them on specific issues that are critical to the United States. So we put our money where our mouth is there. I can say that over the last 3 years, I have increased the budget for journalism training significantly. I think the first year we spent probably about $5,000 or $6,000 only, and now it's much higher. It's closer to about $50,000. So I've increased it by 10 times. And you can get a lot of training for $50,000. So we bring in experts, but not only that, some of our best partners in this training are Ugandans. They're Ugandan NGOs.
What is that one word that you would like to tell the Ugandan journalists as the celebrations mood get into the picture?
Journalists need their freedom, because without journalists, we won't have any. It simply won't be. We can't have a free, open, democratic society without the press to keep government officials like me honest. You have to have it.
I should say we're very much honored to get the time to talk to you about this critical issue as the world goes together to celebrate the World Press Freedom Day. From us, we also wish you a happy Press Freedom Day.